Keith Helfet. I suppose most people know me for designing cars, although I have also designed other things, and I guess have made a bit of a reputation for myself in the car design world. When I think about my passion for cars, I think it goes back to from as long as I can remember. Maybe I was born a petrol head, because as a kid I think I could identify or name every car on the road. And I remember having heated debates as to which cars were better. Some of that passion might come from the fact that my father had been a car dealer, as had my grandfather. But I think that the appeal went deeper than that. Later, as I grew up, I found that I not only loved cars, but I really enjoyed engineering. I liked pull things apart to see how they worked, and I could put them together again, which surprised my father. And so it was logical for me to become an engineer. It was wrong, but it was logical. Quite a bit of my work's been featured in quite a lot of books and obviously lots of magazines and things, but this book was interesting because when they asked me to be part of it as one of the 100 designers that they thought might be influential in the 21st century, they wanted me to write my philosophy. And the thing that I really struggled with was they also wanted a one-liner. But eventually I just said, well, I must say what I think and what I believe, and which is, as a designer, there can be no greater prize for me than to create an object of desire. Interestingly, the other 99 designers did not echo that sentiment at all. I went to the University of Cape Town, and it was, as I say, no question about me doing anything other than mechanical engineering. But I suppose, like quite a few of my friends, I was better at partying than studying, so didn't take it seriously. But I was also quite disappointed that the engineering degree was not about mechanics and mechanical things, it was applied maths. My parents were very concerned I wasn't doing well, and I was advised to do an aptitude test, and that suggested industrial design. And when I discovered that that could include car design, that really interested me. So I thought, well, maybe I should design a car. It's so bizarre for me now to think that it never occurred to me to try and draw it. I thought, I'll design a car. Okay, I'll make a car. So I managed to get a written-off Triumph Spitfire, and I just worked out a way of trying to design a car around it. Most of the body could bolt off anyway, so it was an ideal donor car. And I made a bit of a structure, put some foam on, and the only modelling material, media that I could afford was plaster of Paris. So I just went ahead with that in my parents' garage. I found I really enjoyed it. I really got into this. It was mixing half a pound at a time. I had, by the end of it, gone through 700 pounds of this. So it was a long process. But I felt good about that. Having now completed what was dubbed by my friends the concrete car, and got my degree, I had found that there were two places in the world that you could actually study car design. One was the Art Center in Pasadena, California, which was an undergraduate course, and then there was the Royal College of Art, which had in the industrial design school an offshoot that was doing automotive design. So I got on a ship, came to England, came to London, went to the college. I was very friendly greeted when I said I wanted to do their automotive course. Oh, we've never had anyone from South Africa. Have you got a portfolio? And I said, no. Because that's what we have a lot of, so it's an understatement, a lot of interest in the course. We have many applicants and we have about half a dozen places. So we look at the portfolios and we'll choose who we think will be most suitable. I couldn't draw, I'd never been to art school, and I thought there is absolutely no chance that I could get in here. And then realised how naive I'd been. And they said, well, so I said, well, I haven't done any of that. They said, well, why do you think you want to become a car designer? So I said, well, I've designed a car. They said, what? What? You must have used drawings. So I said, no. So I said, did you do a model? I said, yes. So I said, what scale? I said, oh, a car, full size. And they were amazed. Oh, we've never had an application from anyone who's done that before. Have you got some pictures? I said, yes. I said, well, submit that in the portfolio. We'll give you some of these sketches and you can take home and try and do some drawings as well and submit that to the college. I had a cat and hell's chance of getting in. I went skiing, went to Europe, came back a few months later and was absolutely gobsmacked to find that I'd been offered a place. So when I graduated, I needed to get a job, and the opportunities were very limited because all the cars in the world were at that point being designed in 6 countries. The States, Japan, which were sort of closed shops, and then the 4 countries in Europe, Britain, Germany, France and Italy. And I did interviews in those countries. Also had an interview at Jaguar. For lots of reasons, the Jaguar option was my preferred. When I started work at Jaguar in early '78, the company was a part of British Leyland, which was in trouble. And by 1980, the company was in serious trouble, and there was a strong possibility that Jaguar would have been closed down. Michael Edwards had been brought in to try and save British Leyland, and the Jaguar board put to him the new model with its business case, but our director thought that that business case could be strengthened if there could be a spin-off car made from that platform, a shortened platform of that project. And so in 1980, the half a dozen of us in the design studio were asked to put forward some design proposals for a new sports car that could be done from a shortened XJ40. This, although it was going to be a successor to the XJS, the XJS was not really loved in the way the E-Type had been, and that I should really try and make a successor to the E-Type. And I became aware of the size of that task. But I put forward some sketches with difficulty, but I did sketches because that had to be the way. And Sir William, who used to still regularly visit the design studio, was asked by Jim Randall and John Egan to choose because of his obvious reputation, and he chose mine. I then made a quarter-scale model of it, and of course once I was in 3D and in clay, I was happy because that was my medium. But what was also really significant, that's when Sir William really took an interest, and that's when he took me under his wing. And I had the unbelievable privilege of having Sir William as a sort of tutor and mentor for the next 5 years. While working on XJ41, I got a phone call out of the blue, I think it was on Boxing Day, from Jim Randall to say that he'd built a chassis, which potentially for a Group B racing car, to take on Ferrari and Porsche, who had recently built Group B racing cars. And could I put a pretty body on it? The idea of doing something like that would have been a brilliant idea for Jaguar, but of course as a designer and as engineers, that prospect was equally mouth-watering, and from that the Saturday Club was formed. The Saturday Club was so called because we had our meetings on a Saturday. Jim had figured that, particularly the situation of the company at the time, there was no chance of him getting any budget or therefore a resource to do this. So the only way he could see of creating a car like this was to do it as a skunk works. So he got 12 volunteers from within the company and many volunteer companies. I wanted the exterior, the design, to be seen as a spiritual successor to a car called XJ13, which was a beautiful Malcolm Sayer design. It was one-off. It was designed to be a mid-engined racing car. My inspiration for the design was all about the sculpture of the cars, because I, by that time, had got into designing and tried to understand what made Jaguar special, and it was about their magnificent, beautiful sculpture, the form, which had a lot of movement in it, and I wanted to try and capture some of that from both the E-Type and then on this project, the XJ13. One of the real scary bits going from a quarter-scale model, because there was no budget to do a full-size clay model, was going from this quarter-scale model into not only a full-size, but full-size metal that was being made as accurately as we could make to the data from that quarter-scale model. And you can see here, look how difficult it is to make flat sheets of aluminium into such really complicated surfaces. Can you imagine how difficult it would be to do that? While we had been doing the basic design work, the contributor companies were building the actual car. And in all, it took about 3.5 years to go from design to a running car. And eventually, this car was launched in '88 at the NEC Motor Show. And when it was launched at the NEC, jaws literally dropped. We were there watching it, and it was absolutely amazing. And the response in the media, in everything, and particularly some of the customers came, said, I want to buy one, put in an order. And the company said, no, this is a concept, we're not sure we're going to make it. And not one, but several people on the day said, I'm going to leave you with a blank check. And it changed the perception of Jaguar forever. After '88, the decision was taken by Jaguar to put the 220 into production. And it was decided that the exterior design, for which I was responsible, was so fundamentally important to it that I should stick with the project in spite of the fact that I wouldn't be employed by that company, which was now called Jaguar Sport. So I stuck with the project all the way through. While that was happening, Ford bought the company. XJ41 and the saloon car that was being done were both cancelled. XJ41 was eventually put into production. but under a different badge called Aston Martin, in which the design was modified slightly and put onto an XJS platform. The 220 had then gone into production. I was working at Jaguar, got a call from a guy saying he'd seen the 220, thought it was the ultimate piece of automotive sculpture. He was a sculptor and he owned a company that made the magnets for MRIs. And I said, I didn't know what that was. He said, it's a body scanner, and would I design one for him? And cut a long story short, I did. It was very successful, and that opened up product design for me. This is my latest project. So this is a proof of concept prototype to try and address the problems of, first of all, trying to look around while you're riding in traffic, to have a stable stop, to be more comfortable, and also to be able to use the power of your legs as are used on recumbent bikes. This all sounded really simple, and once we got this riding position, we then found other people had tried it before, and we then understood why other people hadn't pursued it, because it was really difficult. My concept was chosen for the XK8 project, and I was given the option of then taking over that, but there was a lot of politics at the time, and I foolishly declined. When the PR department decided that they wanted to commemorate the XK engine's 50th anniversary, I got involved and then designed a hooligans version of the XK8, which was called the XK180. So the project had started without me being involved, and it was a shortened XK8, and some of the body panels were going to be replaced with aluminium to save weight. And I was actually in Detroit at the motor show discussing this with our head of PR, and they said, well, actually they're going to just make all aluminium body panels. So I said, well, look, I've seen the design, and it doesn't look right like that, because it looks like just a shortened XK. If it's all new body panels, why don't we make a new car? He said, could you do that in 8 weeks? Or in the time, which turned out to be 8 weeks. I said, possibly. So I said, well, I'll look into it when we get back, and discussed it with my boss. And he agreed. He said that it didn't look good as it was. And he said, are you volunteering? And I said, I suppose I am. I loved the idea of making it a bit more voluptuous, partly because I always remembered back to seeing a D-type body shell at the Prescott Hill climb, and I thought this looks like a work of art. Behind the driver's head they had nacelles that would aerodynamically work, and I thought I would capture some of that, and of course it's a two-seater, so I had two of them. And I thought, well, actually it would be nice to put some cleavage into the screen so that that theme then carried over all the way through the car. I went straight into, I did a little bit of doodling on Photoshop and a few pencil lines, and then went straight into a full-size clay model, which was done off-site. And that's how the XK180 body was born. And our SVO, a Special Vehicle Organization or Operations Department, were going to do all of the mechanical changes. They agreed that they could change some of the underbonnet structure to accommodate my different front end, and same at the back. And I think we had a total of about 8 months to do that and launch it at the Paris show in '98. Had a remarkable reception. including blank checks. There was a diktat for us to make a production version of the car. And because I'd done 180, and because it was supposed to be, if you like, some spin-off of that, I was just given the project, but with no brief. I thought, okay, well, I'll do what I think is right, in other words, what I'd like. So, in a sense, this became a car for me. I designed a car that I wanted. It did have to have some, and I wanted it to have some link to XK180. So the profiles are really quite different. But the front-end graphics, the rear-end graphics, and the interior graphics were carried over, so that it immediately had this visual reference. The F-Type was launched in 2000 at the Detroit Motor Show. Looking back on my career, which has been a very unconventional, I think there would be so many decisions I would have taken differently. But would I really want to change what's happened? I don't think so. I've been incredibly lucky to have designed 5 Jaguar sports cars, or the exteriors of them, designed lots of other things that I never would have dreamt of. And I think generally I can consider myself a fairly lucky bloke. This is the original 220 quarter-scale model.